Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3. Very fun, weird off-season news topic day, Ari, because when we finished the show yesterday, the news was breaking that Jim Knowlton was retiring as Cal's athletic director. And, you know, it was one of those things where he's not really retiring. He's got 4 years left on his contract. What happened there? And, you know, if you've been following the Cal thing, you know that Ron Rivera got hired as their GM. He's the former Carolina Panthers, Washington Commanders head coach, former Cal football player. And you knew there was some pressure on the AD that some of the donors wanted Rivera put in charge. They had the hand Ron the keys movement on the algorithm. Well, Ari, I don't know about you, but I kept thinking, oh, these GMs that have more NFL-like powers are going to be a threat to coaches. I didn't realize they're probably a bigger threat to the ADs.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing because, first of all, what the hell is going on in the Bay Area? Like, there's a lot happening with GMs in the Bay Area.
I was going to say, Andrew Luck has similar powers at Stanford. I actually think they probably based it on that when they hired Ron Rivera. They saw what Luck was doing and said, okay, let's do something like this. And then, because remember, the couple board members of Cal's biggest collective said when Rivera was hired, they're not donating anymore to the collective until Knowlton's gone. So that's pretty strong statement. But I find it interesting because, you know, we don't know how this general manager thing is going to work at a lot of places. Everybody's got a different idea of what that position should be. But like at Cal, Ron Rivera is going to run football, and he's essentially going to be the athletic director for football. They've got co-ADs. They promoted 2 deputies to co-AD, and they're going to run the other sports. And Ron Rivera will run football, including all the fundraising and everything else. That sounds like an AD to me.
Yeah, interesting. AD for football. Yeah, so my first thought process on this, Andy, has been there's no precedent for this working, right? And like if you say they modeled it after the Andrew Luck thing, which it seems like they did because that was a thought that I had, you're modeling it after something that in theory hasn't even taken off yet or gone off the ground yet. So like as we go into this new world of what is a GM's job actually, like some are going to be more administrative, some are going to be more personnel based, some are going to be both, but like we don't even know which one works yet.
Nope. And that's what's so interesting about this is everybody's experimenting. You know, I'm kicking myself because yesterday we didn't even mention that the House settlement got passed right as our vacation started. And I think a lot of it was because we talked about it so much. We've talked on the show about what happens when the House settlement starts about the revenue sharing. So our audience understands everything. It wasn't like that was big breaking news to them. They knew that Judge Wilkin was going to approve the settlement eventually. But I think as this starts, as schools now have money to pay players, they're all going to try experimenting with something. And, you know, if you have something that's working, like if you're Ohio State and Mark Pantoni's your GM, and Mark Pantoni's the guy who effectively invented what the previous version of the college football GM was. He came up as a student. He was a student at Florida when Urban Meyer was the coach there, worked in the recruiting office there, went with Urban Meyer to Ohio State, kind of built that out. But that version of the GM is basically your head of recruiting, because it used to be that you had an assistant coach who was your recruiting coordinator and that person ran your recruiting. But now you have, you have Mark at Ohio State, you have Marshall Malchow at Oregon, you have people like that who are strictly personnel people, but they report to the head football coach. Yeah. So those places it's working, they're not going to change that. It's the places where things are not working. And, Justin Wilcox is 42-50 in 8 seasons at Cal. So I don't know if we would call that working. They were 6-6 last year. Their starting quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, is now the starting quarterback at Indiana. In the spring, they lost tailback Jade Knott to Oklahoma. Like, I don't know that you'd say it's definitely working there. So this would be the place you're going to get an experiment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you are at a place that's kind of, up and down, the experimentation makes a lot of sense because you want to try to invent something that's different. I mean, if you look at all the programs that were meh to great, or programs that went under, great evolutions in our lifetimes, a lot of them did so by innovation. So like, I understand that. The thing that I always come back to though, is if you're going to be the GM, that title to me has always been an implication that it's related to personnel, because that's what the GM in the NFL does, right? Like, they make draft picks, they make signings, they decide.
But see, that's where it gets weird, because it depends, because sometimes the GM has power over the coach and sometimes not in the NFL. Like, I know, it just depends.
Does the GM
on
ever
the team.
deal with the NFL and their marketing? Like, there's a lot of stuff in this specific instance that doesn't really fall under the purview of what you would normally expect from somebody who's trying to help build a roster.
Yeah, this would be more of like a president of football operations.
I mean, could you imagine if Mark Pantoni had to fundraise?
It would change his job considerably. And that's what's interesting about this Rivera thing is, and he said it. And River, we've got clips of Ron Rivera talking last month, which, by the way, if you watch the Ron Rivera press conference in April, you knew this was going to happen.
Yeah, should have seen it coming. Yeah.
You knew it. So, River, play the clip where Ron Rivera is talking about having his hands in every facet of the program.
Joaquin, I will report directly to the chancellor at the University of California. Rich Lyons is our chancellor, and that's who I'm going to report directly to. I think the biggest thing everybody has to understand is that what I have with Justin is a working relationship. It's an opportunity for he and I to get together and discuss, collaborate, and talk about the things that we need to do as a university to help this football team become what I, again, believe can be, and that is a very successful program that's going to strive for excellence. I think that the opportunity to work with Justin, I don't know if you guys have been out to practice, had an opportunity to see how he and I work. It's been very cool. I really appreciate the candidness in which he and I sit there and talk during practice, how he and I get together and talk about the things that are going on in meetings and just around, the facility. I think that's one of the things people have to understand. This is not about quote unquote reporting as much as this is about working together. And I think that's probably one of the most important things people have to understand. He and I are here to work together and striving to make this football team one of the best. And again, the one thing everybody has to understand is I do have the opportunity working with the chancellor to make decisions on what is best for Cal football, because my hands are in every facet of Cal football, and that's something everybody needs to understand.
He kept mentioning what everybody needs to understand. River, let's play one more. Let's play the one where he talks about his role with the chancellor.
All right. So to be clear, you'll have an important voice in the situations that I mentioned, but not necessarily be the ultimate authority.
Oh, I see what you want me to do is you want me to tell you that I have the ultimate authority. Well, I am going to tell you I do have that other than the chancellor. That's who I answer to. Every major decision that he and I will always talk about. I'm not making these things willy-nilly. I'm making things gathering as much information as I can. Okay. And if that means going to the chancellor, sitting down and saying, look, this is something that's very vital. It's very important. And I'm going to bring it to him. He and I will have that conversation. And again, I would like to believe that he's going to trust me, which I believe he does, because I trust this chancellor. I really, truly do, especially when he tells everybody football is important. It's important that football is successful because that impacts, not just the university and not just the athletics, but it impacts everybody that's around Cal football.
Ari, if I were the AD and I heard that on April 22nd, I would have already been planning opening a vineyard. I just walked out at that
That'd
point.
Be lovely, wouldn't it? Opening a vineyard.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So that isn't somebody who's shying away. Like, for the first half of that, I was like, am I just closing my eyes and listening to what Jim Nagy was saying when he got hired at Oklahoma? Because it's going to be a collaborative effort. We're on the same team. Everybody love everybody.
Yeah. It's a little different situation here.
He kind of veered off there at the end and got into... you want me to say that I'm in charge? Okay, fine. I'm in charge. You know what I mean? Like, that's remind me of Eights Rothstein in the casino interview. It's just like I'm the boss. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating to me because the thing that I am most driven by and the thing that I'm most interested in is who is in charge of getting good players to play football for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So whenever I talk about this topic, it always comes back to that. And I always think that it's very funny when somebody who has a predominant NFL background is brought in to do it at the college level because it is a very different job. And I feel like in this business, there is an assumption that if you were an NFL head coach or you did something in the NFL, that you are more qualified to do that same thing in college when it's a very different job description and you're analyzing and breaking down tape from a different type of player. You have to like try to like adjust for puberty and, you know, who's going to, you know, work hard and all these different things that you get with children that doesn't necessarily really pertain to the NFL. And it's just a huge risk, not to mention that he's going to be having meetings with the chancellor. How many times do you think that like Marshall Malkow had a meeting with Oregon's chancellor? Like, I mean, like,
maybe like, one when he got hired, like,
you know what I mean?
Or he just like swung by the office. Hey, how you doing?
Excuse me. So like, is it good? Like, do you want the person who's in charge of your football program to be bogged down by a bunch of minutia like that?
I think it just depends on the situation, because again, he is doing the job of the AD. He's not doing the job of the personnel person that presumably you have someone underneath you. The idea that somebody from the NFL is more qualified for this, I think, is because they've dealt with salary caps and they've dealt with, you know, a budget before in terms of player acquisition. But I don't know that that necessarily is something you have to have worked in the NFL to have. And I think we're learning that with the programs that have been successful. The GMs that they have that are strictly personnel guys are handling that money piece of it just fine. Or they've brought somebody in who can serve as kind of a capologist.
You know what's different though? In the NFL, you have a pile of money.
Yep.
And that pile of money that you have. Like, there's no changing that pile. I feel like
Correct.
In college, do we ever really know? Like, we always say, if you had X number of dollars to fill out a roster, how would you do it? Who would you pick and who would you spend your money on? How would it all be allocated? But I feel like I don't know. And I know that we get reports and estimations of how much colleges are spending on their rosters, but I'm not even sure if a school, especially like a place that spends a lot, like does Oregon, because they're on the screen, not because I'm picking on them, decide we have X number of dollars and we're not deviating from that? Or does it ebb and flow based on who you get, who wants to come, who's interested, who comes off your board, who flips? Like, there's so many different things that happen in college. I feel like there isn't even a finite number that you have to stick to or adhere to. I think you have to be better on the fly.
They want there to be a finite number. I mean, that brings the house settlement into it, where they say, you know, you have this to give to your athletes in your athletic department, and this year it's 20.5 million. And football,
I do not understand, and you need to explain it to me like I'm 11, because I do not get it.
Okay.
I know I'm supposed to be the inform me.
Okay.
How does the house settlement impact, if at all, how much you're allowed to spend in NIL still?
That is a great question. And that is the question, because there's no answer to it yet. We're not going to know until we see it working in practice how it's actually going to work. And if you ask different people, they say different things. There are certain ADs that are true believers in the settlement, in the enforcement mechanism they've created, and they will tell you that the cap will be the cap. You have to get quote unquote legitimate NIL. And if you don't, then your deal is going to be nixed by this new arm that is going to enforce this stuff. There are other people, football coaches, personnel people who are actually on the ground doing this, who will tell you that it is not going to change a thing on that front.
It's not.
They will just go get NIL donors to donate, and they will go get the players they want. Now,
because the house settlement money is coming directly from television ad revenue. It's a completely different bucket of money.
Well, it's coming from not just television. It's coming from television, ticket sales, everything the athletic department brings in.
Money.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like
one and I think that's how
portfolio and one is your income. Those are two different piles of money. Like, in the
Correct.
pile of money that is currently being used to buy players is not impacted at all by the house settlement. So
it it is impacted in a practical sense, because now at the schools that want to win the national title in football, there are donors who are going to donate. But at most places, the donors who've been giving to the NIL collective are going to say, hey, you now have $20.5 million to spend. I donate to the athletic department. You've got my money. That's your money to spend. I think that's going to be the case at most schools. I don't think that's going to be the case at schools that want to win the national title.
I was going to say, you think that's how it's going to go at Tennessee?
No, absolutely not.
That's how it's going to go at Georgia and Bama and Ohio State and Oregon? You think that's how it's going to go at A&M?
Nope, I don't. I do think it's probably how it's going to go at Boston College, though.
Okay, well, Boston College is a team that we unfortunately don't talk about a lot on the show for that reason. So let's stay in the reality of it, of teams that want to compete at the highest level. And I think that this notion that the House settlement is going to even the playing field is complete misnomer. Everybody's going to get the same baseline number to work with, and then whoever spends more in NIL is still going to line their pockets with the players that they want. Like, you think that like Tennessee's going to stop spending on the best defensive back in the country because of the House settlement? There's no way. And then that pile of money is amorphous. It's completely and utterly different every year and maybe every month, depending on who you get and who you lose out on and what the price tag is. I mean, look at what we just saw with Nico. His price tag changed in school. You don't think the price tags are changing?
They are changing.
Your price tag changed when you're going through a negotiation for a job. My price tag changed.
Of course. It changes when different bidders come to the table. And I do think most schools, even the ones at the highest level that want to spend and that are going to spend, I do think they go into a year thinking this is what we want to spend. This is how much we have. But to your point, you can go get more. And like in Ron Rivera's case, to bring it back to the Cal situation, it would be up to him to go find more. Like, go find the people who will give you more. Which is crazy, because an NFL GM would never have to do that. Right.
And fundraising is a pretty taxing thing. Like, that's not an easy thing to do.
It's the main skill of a college athletic director. It is the most important skill a college athletic director can have.
And so, is being an NFL head coach something that qualifies you to do something that's very different?
Yeah. Now, Ron Rivera, in his defense, was the de facto GM when he got to Washington. So he's been in the more traditional situation, like at Carolina, where Dave Gettleman was his GM and then Marty Herney was his GM. But he's also been in a situation where he was in charge of personnel, which was, more like what we saw with Bill Belichick at New England. Although I find it funny that Bill Belichick, who's now a college coach, is the GM of his college team. He brought Michael Lombardi, who's worked with him before, to be his GM at North Carolina.
Yeah. Also, can we air out another thing now? Because we didn't talk about the House settlement. And
let's do it.
I've actually been thinking about writing about this, but I want to have a better command on my opinion, and I want you to help me formulate it. And I might write about it right after we're done here.
All right.
But perfect. I've been reading comments, Andy, from different people in different spaces. And you alluded to this 5 minutes ago, where people have all different applications or theories on how the House settlement is going to impede or impact spending on the other branch. And I've read a lot about this enforcement arms from Deloitte, right? And I hear what people are saying about how there's going to be a clearinghouse, and they're going to
it'll go. Yep.
And it'll go through this clearinghouse, and they will look and see, well, is this a legitimate NIL deal or is this a pay-for-pay scam? And I have zero faith in and I read athletic directors and people who are in extreme positions of power right now discussing this. And like, my head wants to explode, because it doesn't make sense in the sense of, like, is this going to hold up in court? And I don't understand how we've gone this far into the evolution of college football the last 4 years with how many court settlements have there been, and the people who are in charge of this enforcement arm not recognizing and understanding or even acknowledging that that's going to be a problem. Like, I don't understand how this clearinghouse is even going to make it a year unless they approve everything, which defeats the purpose of it even existing to begin with.
There you go. They know it's going to be a problem. And by the way, if you want to watch the rest of the show, if you're watching on Twitter right now, join us on YouTube, hop in the chat. It's very lively, much more fun than just watching on Twitter. So come on over here to YouTube. It's in the link below the one you're watching right now. So just click that link and we'll see you on YouTube. Okay. So I think most of the ADs, even the ones that are saying this will be fine, everything's going to be great, I think they know it's going to be a problem. Here's the deal. The players can't sue because they're bound to arbitration because they've opted in the settlement. They're taking revenue share money. If they have a problem with what NIL Go says regarding their deal, they have to submit to our binding arbitration. So they're not going to sue. The schools aren't going to sue. They also have to submit to binding arbitration. Everybody else can sue, which includes the people who would be paying the money. And so if I want to give somebody $1 million a year, who is Deloitte to tell me that it's not market value? What I want to pay you is your market value. So I can sue and say, how dare you tell me what I can and can't pay this person?
And do you want to know what the argument is going to be, Andy, in court? Forget the kid. Forget the player. The NCAA or the clearinghouse, Deloitte, is going to tell a business owner how to run their business?
Right. Here's the other piece of it. A state attorney general could get involved too. We've already seen that with Tennessee. We saw that when Nico was playing at Tennessee and the NCAA was going after his initial deal and they were investigating that. And basically the Tennessee attorney general sued the NCAA and got the rules thrown out. Well, there's nothing that would keep a state attorney general from suing over this. And I can think of certain states where there's one dominant school, Tennessee, Louisiana, Ohio, where the attorney general might jump in a case like that.
I have this house, and every day I wake up in it, Andy, there's something wrong. Okay, want to hear the newest thing? When I shut my shower off, it doesn't shut off all the way. Like there's still drippage now. I can't get the water.
No.
It's running constantly.
Oh God!
So we have a plumber coming, or we had a plumber come yesterday, and hopefully it's just a cartridge. Is that what's in it? I don't know. However, I'm going to get scammed in this plumbing deal. They're going to do it today.
Sounds like a gasket. You got a gasket problem somewhere.
Gasket, cartridge, stem, whatever it is, it's going to be $1,000. So anyway, they came yesterday, and I got to talking to the plumber. And this is, I know it sounds like a tangent, but I'm going to wrap it around. Okay. And this plumber walked through my office, and he goes, "Oh, wow, you like college football?" And then we got to talking about college football. And he's a huge Texas fan. Come to find out, this is one of the largest plumbing chains in the state of Texas. And this guy is the owner of the company, and it has 1 million different branches. And he's just a blue collar genius, rich guy who expanded his business. Those people who I talk about. Huge Texas fan. And apparently somebody who donates heavily both to the athletic department and their NIL fund. Okay.
Ooh.
If this, I'm not going to tell you what the name of the business is, but if this person decides I want to pay Ryan Wingo $1 million so I can put his face on the side of all of my plumbing vans, whether he puts his face on the plumbing van or not, are you telling me that the Deloitte clearinghouse is going to tell this plumbing millionaire that he can't pay Ryan Wingo? Forget Ryan Wingo.
Right. Yeah, you're infringing.
You can't tell a business owner how to run their business. Whether or not you think it's disingenuous isn't up for you to decide. Maybe he's just a bad business. You don't get to tell people how to spend their money. This is insane. This whole thing of like, we're going to enforce this am I the only one who thinks this is absolutely insane?
No, most of the people in college football feel the same way you do.
Okay, so if I wrote a column saying that this clearinghouse is insane, that's just like me saying that you need air to breathe, right?
Basically, but I do think there are people in the leadership structure who either believe this is going to work or just want it to work so bad because the other option is you go back to what they're doing now, which is no real rules. And at this point, they've gone no real rules for 4 years. It's fine. They keep putting games on and TV keeps paying more for them. People keep showing up.
Vance is always in here making good points. I love Vance.
Yeah.
This guy's always in here, giving us heat. And it's
Imagine Deloitte telling Phil Knight how to do business. Exactly.
Who is Deloitte to tell Phil Knight how to spend? If he wanted to employ the best, and by the way, with Nike, that money actually would probably be real if you actually used the athletes who came to Oregon in Nike campaigns. So I don't know if it's the greatest example. You might be easier to tell a plumber who has a bunch of money not to do it than you would be somebody who actually runs a business that employs athletes to market their product. But like, it doesn't matter what the scale is. You can go to Phil Knight or you can go to the plumber. It is the business owner's prerogative to allocate their own money the way that they view is necessary. And if he thinks that Ryan Wingo is worth $1 million to tweet about, hey, you know, if your gasket in your shower is broken, even though your house is only 3 years old, and you just have problems every week, and you want to go have it fixed, then you know, go use X Plumbing, you know, services. Here's the phone number. That's his prerogative. It's like I feel like it's so funny. We're so aimed at the actual athlete and making sure that they don't take advantage of the system that we're forgetting that there's business owners that can spend their money however they want. It's America.
Well, there's no we. It's the people who were defendants in the House case, which were the ACC, SEC, Big 12, Big 10, and the Pac-12, essentially trying to recreate the NCAA. The NCAA's enforcement arm has been neutered, essentially. These rules have been declared on, you know, the violations of the Sherman Act. So they're making new rules within the structure of the settlement, which is not it's not a decided court case. There's no court verdict here. This was a settlement. So it's not precedent. But they want so badly to just recreate the NCAA that they'll believe this. And then reality is going to happen. Everybody's been telling them what's going to happen. What you just said, since this idea bubbled up a few years ago, people have said, this is what will happen. And it is what's going to happen. Here's the other possibility. So in terms of deciding what fair market value is, and I'm using air quotes there, this Deloitte mechanism was essentially an algorithm, is going to look at various deals and decide, does this fit within the normal parameters? What happens if every school submits all of their new deals and they all look the same, but they don't fit the quote unquote normal parameters that the algorithm has now? The algorithm is going to adjust, because if 1,000 deals come in that all look the same, that's the market.
Well, here's the other thing too, and this is a Bad at Math podcast, but I'm very interested on how they actually programmed or set the algorithm to operate. Because if you're trying to figure out what fair market value is for an athlete, wouldn't fair market value be compared to pro athletes? And aren't they getting paid a ton of money? Like, how do you even decide what fair market value is? That's
what they're using is they're using pro athlete deals. They have data.
So then there's going to be pro athlete deals are very lucrative. How much do you think Aaron Rodgers got from State Farm?
Well, certain pro athlete deals. Yes, Aaron Rodgers' State Farm deal is very lucrative, but what does like an offensive lineman in Buffalo get from a car dealership? It's probably not that big of a deal.
You mean Buffalo Bills?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But then also too, who do you think's more marketable? The offensive lineman for the Buffalo Bills or the 5-star receiver from Florida?
Correct. But here's the deal. NIL pay has gone based on football value, not on marketability. So you want to pay your left tackle. So you're going to pay your left tackle, even if he's not necessarily that marketable. So that's where you're going to run into this issue. But again, I'm with you. I just don't think they're going to be able to tell people how to spend their money. I don't think they're going to get away with that.
Yeah, so here's the thing, and I'm no business genius. I don't know anything, but what is there's only one solution that we've ever come up with where it's like, this is how we can stop this from happening. This is how we can end the wild, wild west.
Yeah.
And that's to make them employees, right?
Or if you could somehow collectively bargain with them without making them employees, if you could have them be gig employees or contractors and you could collectively bargain with them, which I don't know if you could do that. Yes. But collective bargaining is the way where the players involved agree to this. And therefore, if they were to take you to court, the court would just say, well, you agree to this. and throw it out.
Okay. Lastly, if you collectively bargain, what is to stop you from taking NIL deals?
Oh, nothing.
I think what we're trying to get to the bottom of is how can we make NIL not so crazy? And I don't know that there's a solution to that problem.
But the thing is, if you collectively bargain, you can have very strict penalties for it. It's the same reason, like, because people say, well, why doesn't Jerry Jones just supplement Dak Prescott's pay with an NIL deal? Because Jerry Jones would lose draft picks if he did that.
Yeah.
So if you have a collective bargaining agreement, you can have severe
penalize
penalties.
the actual schools, and you can penalize
and the athletes. Yeah. And nobody would feel bad for anybody because they agreed to it.
Right. And like the only reason why rules, Josh Pate tweeted this yesterday, and I thought it was funny because it's so obvious, but it's funny to read out loud. Of like the only point in having rules is if people are afraid to break them.
Right.
So like, understand too that like we live in this world of college football, and you know what's going to happen, right? If that ever comes into play and they actually do collectively bargain and they have these stringent rules, the return.
You think they won't? Maybe. But the thing is, if you get caught with the bag man in a CBA situation, you can severely punish. Whereas in this situation, you can't.
Where you couldn't severely punish in the old days?
No. Not anybody who was actually involved.
No, I'm saying like
by the time you figured it out, it would be too late.
I covered a tattoo scandal where people sold their own possessions that their careers got derailed from it. People still did it when you were punished. Like go back to 2010. People still did
I don't.
And that wasn't even
true.
taking money. That was selling their own stuff. Imagine if somebody, you don't think Cam Newton would have taken that money if there was a collective bargaining agreement?
Well, I think Cam Newton would have been paid a lot more money if there was a collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think
maybe they will get so much money it won't be worth risking at that point. But
right, and again, like Cam Newton, nothing was ever proven. But if any of the numbers thrown out around Cam Newton were true, it was the biggest bargain in the history of sports.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. The bagman money is chump change compared to all of this. Chump change. What were we talking about with Cam Newton? 180 grand, 200 grand, something like that?
I thought it was 180,000. Yeah.
Okay. That was the rumor. What was Cam Newton worth to Auburn that year? 15 million?
Yeah.
20 million? Like, come on. I mean, let's be real. Let's think about this.
180 G's back then, though, was a lot. I mean, that was a lot of money to just get.
Well, sure, but it wasn't what he was worth.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, when you thought
Allegedly.
about because back in the day, like in 2010, if somebody kicked somebody $2,500, that was a big deal.
Yeah, but that's the point. The bagman is such chump change. It may not be worth the risk.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you bring the bagman back and the bagman hands somebody 10 grand who's already making 600 grand, he's gonna be like, I'm really not going to risk my career over this, sir.
I think I would take 10 G's if I'm in an
somebody take the 10 grand. Somebody would. But if it meant that you got caught and you'd never play again, I think you just take your 600 grand and be happy with it.
Yeah. I just think that there's ways of doing it of like, hey, come to the school, go on an official visit. All of a sudden, Billy Bob at the nice steakhouse says, hey, yeah, come here. We'll also kick you $15,000 a week in your locker.
Yeah. And they might still do that. But I don't know that it'd be worth the risk if you're already making quite a bit more. Now, $15,000 a week, we're talking that adds up to some serious money.
$10,000 a week. I don't know. Like, anyway, like you can find a way to. They've been funneling money to players.
$10,000 a week is $500,000 a year. So Bagman ain't paying $500,000. That's the thing. The bagman doesn't have that much money.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Like, it's funny how everybody wants the bag. We romanticize the bagman. The bagman was broke. Corporate money's the real money.
Yeah.
Like, Now you got that grocery store money. You got that plumber money. You got the
Nike money.
State Farm money. Exactly. Like, that's the real money. The bag man was broke.
Yeah.
I just think everybody wants the bag man back. I think everybody loved the bag man.
That blue thong Victoria's Secret medium money. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Did we solve the mystery yesterday? The mystery wasn't solved, right?
I got a lot of suggestions. A lot of suggestions of people who said that if I sent a message to the girls about the underwear and Brittany didn't, that they might be embarrassed to acknowledge to me that it was their underwear.
Aren't you embarrassed about that? Everybody wears underwear.
No, I know.
Unless you don't.
Yeah, I don't know. I know these girls very well, though. It wasn't that bizarre. Although I did get a few texts from their husbands saying, "Why are you texting my wife about underwear?" Like in like a funny way. But like it is.
Oh, by the way, if you didn't listen to yesterday's show, go back and listen to the end of yesterday's show. There was a mystery at Ari's house. A pair of thong panties mysteriously showed up in the wash, and they did not belong to Ari's wife.
Well,
and,
the good news too, I didn't say yesterday on the show.
Whole story unspooled.
Is we had a really, really great weekend as a family for Father's Day, and like she's really into me right now. So like, there's no turbulence in the household, but she likes me right now for sure. Yeah. What if the answer to the mystery was it was just mine? That is what you want.
Well, I mean, you have lost some weight, so you might be able to fit into a medium now.
Yeah, a medium thong would be I'll try them on. I'll let you know. Actually, I threw them away. Maybe I shouldn't have thrown them away. I should have kept them for evidence. But I have a picture. I have an image.
I was gonna say, you got a plastic bag. You handle them with tongs. So, all right.
Hold on a second. I gotta. You vamp for a second, but I have the picture. I'm gonna send it to River. He can show everybody what the panties look like. If they're yours.
No. How did we not show this yesterday? What are we doing here?
If these are yours, please there's a $500 reward.
Oh, I cannot wait to see this. Now I'm just. How did we not show this yesterday on the screen?
Hold on. I sing like These Eyes for me for a second.
These eyes cry every night for you. These eyes have seen a lot of love, and they never. Okay.
So you know what?
My brother came all the way from Scottsdale, Arizona. What?
If you save an image that you took a week ago, it automatically goes back to the point in time that it's time stamped, so it doesn't show up like right. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of my.
That is how iPhones work. Yes.
But like, I want it to be at the top. All right, copy, undies, paste.
Oh God, here we go.
All right, I got it.
This is such good pod right here.
This is the underwear.
We do have
and by the way, they've been worn. They're not.
We do have another football story to talk about, by the way, which we will get to. But
I don't know if they're there. But
the text messages come through. I'm not going to look at it. I want to see it when it's on screen, when the audience can see it too.
Yeah. I mean, these aren't new panties. They've been through the ringer. I don't know. I don't know. Whoever wore them wore the hell out of them.
Oh no! Oh my Lord! Oh, what are we? Why are these things not shown? There they are. There they are.
And I guess there's a cute little slit, right here. That's how she knew they weren't hers.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or anyway,
a notch.
There's a little.
There you go.
Like on the back, up by the tailbone, there's like 3 little threads that open.
Yep.
It's sexy, whoever they are. Those are
Nathan
mine.
Says those are his, and he'll take the $500 reward. Done.
Okay, let's go back to the next thing.
All right, back to actual football. But we'll put a bow on the GM discussion, because we veered into the house settlement thing, but that was a discussion we needed to have anyway. But like we talked about Jim Nagy at Oklahoma, I think that's a different situation. Not for Brent Venables. I do think Brent Venables and Jim Nagy, that relationship, we'll see how that goes, depending on whether Oklahoma wins or not. But like Joe Castiglione, the athletic director at Oklahoma, I don't think he needs to worry about Jim Nagy at all. Whereas if you're a weaker AD, you probably do need to worry about the GM. But if you're a strong coach, strong AD, you don't have to worry about it at all. River, do you have the Kirby Smart clip from the SEC spring meetings where he got asked about the GM? let's play
When you were
Kirby
recruiting a
Smart.
player, did they ever ask you who your general manager is and what goes into structuring your organization, choosing not to have?
No, nobody asked me who the general manager is. We introduce everybody to everybody in the organization, and we have people that fill that role. It may be 3-4 people, including myself, but we're very clear in the roles of our staff members and what they do. They learn that throughout the recruiting process, and we utilize those. But that the only part you asked?
Just about how you structure why you choose not to have that title.
Oh, we do have that. I mean, we do have that. We have people that do that. What does the general manager do in your mind?
They vary from organization to organization.
I agree. So we have people that do various things instead of pinpointing the general manager. Because I think if I ask every coach what their general manager does, they all do something different. So I mean, I can't figure out what you define it as. Because when you ask me what is the general manager, I want to know what you think it does. Because in the NFL, they do different than what they do at our level.
Translation: I roll my program with an iron fist. It doesn't matter if somebody has the general manager title.
Yeah. It's also too, like, I wonder, like, moving forward, if everyone's going to have a general manager in 2035 and you have to, like, roll them out based on how successful your coach already is. Like, there's like a grandfathered in program. It's like Georgia might be the last one to actually have like a real general manager because they have one. His name is Kirby Smart.
Yes.
And like the more successful your program currently is, the longer it's going to take to get to that. And then like maybe when Kirby Smart retires or moves on or whatever, you know, then Georgia will institute one before they hire their next coach, and then everybody will have one. But it almost feels like, you know, who you don't talk about this a lot with are the teams that are winning already a lot. Like, you know, it's the teams that are like, I mean, hell.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan Day. Yeah. Hey, Ryan Day, do you want to restructure your front office? No. Why would you change anything?
No. So, but like, that's what's so interesting about Oklahoma to me. It's like Oklahoma is a traditionally dominant program who is undergoing a pretty drastic shift during a time in which it's down, and they have a coach that isn't Kirby Smart. And whether it works there or not, it's going to be fascinating, because that might be the foundation of the future for every program that is of Oklahoma's stature that runs into a tough few years, you know? But like if Lincoln Riley were still at Oklahoma and their last 3 years mirrored the previous 3 years, they wouldn't have a GM right now. Now,
and USC has a new GM, by the way, speaking of Lincoln Riley.
Yeah. And we don't know that those 3 years would have gone with what we know about Lincoln Riley now. But I'm saying if Oklahoma would have just kept humming and Lincoln Riley never would have left and Caleb was there and won a Heisman there and all the things that we knew about Oklahoma were still true, would this have happened? No, of course not. People don't change things that aren't broken.
Right. So we'll find out what happens next at Cal. Does Ron Rivera, I mean, the thing is, like, they lost Jay Knott when Ron Rivera was the GM already. So it's not like he's a cure-all, but now it's very clear what his role is.
Yep.
So we'll find out. But
Jay Knott's at
other
Oklahoma.
news.
So, you know, just everything's one big circle in this sport. Everything connects.
Exactly. Jim Nagy got Jay Knott. So there you go. In other news, we have a quarterback commitment to the portal, which very strange timing for that. Jake Garcia, former 4-star recruit, was at Miami, was at Missouri, was at East Carolina last year. He is now going to Michigan, which makes me wonder what is the deal now in Michigan's quarterback room, because obviously we know that Bryce Underwood's probably the starter. We talked to Chris Ballas about that last week. It was originally going to be Mikey Keene probably until Underwood was ready. Keene got hurt. Underwood was the guy through spring practice. It looks like Underwood's the guy. This makes you wonder, like, are Keene or Davis Warren maybe not going to be ready at the beginning of the season, and Michigan needs a backup right now?
Yeah, it's an interesting addition, because I don't think that anybody's under the illusion that Garcia is going to play, right? Like, that's not, so it's a depth
or come in to start, right? Exactly.
So if it's a depth play, why do they need depth if Mikey Keene is healthy?
Yeah. So it might be that there's been a setback or there's been some other issues, but that is the question. And I mean, does that change anything about how you feel about Michigan? Because I don't know. For me, Ari, I'm just looking at it being cautiously optimistic that with Underwood, they're going to have a more functional passing offense. So, as we talked about with Chris Ballas last week, they don't really have a lot of receivers that we know about right now that wow you. Now there may be some young guys that step in and become that, but they don't bring back a ton in the receiving core that scares you.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I think is kind of interesting about this more than anything is that like Jake Garcia was once a top 50 recruit. And I know that he has been to 3 schools now, and this is his 4th. Yeah. So I think a lot of people will punt on the notion that like this guy can play at a high level. But I wonder if this too is just like a nice insurance policy depth play with some what Michigan views as some upside, where you have somebody who might be able to take some snaps if you get to that point. But I don't know that this changes anything. Like my whole thought process with Michigan is I can't wait to see Underwood play, and Michigan's offense will go with their freshmen. Like, is that where you are? That's where I am.
Oh yeah, that's exactly where I am. And the thing is, like, I suspect they're going to be able to run the ball very well, which I think should take some pressure off Underwood and should take some pressure off those receivers, because they're going to get some one-on-one matchups on the outside. Because if you're defending Michigan, you're dealing with a bunch of heavy sets. They're still going to be able to smash you up front. They're going to have good backs. So I do think with someone who is more dynamic at quarterback, and that was what Chris Ballas said. Everything we heard about Bryce Underwood through his recruitment is he has incredible arm talent. That's not what Michigan had last year. So if they are similar in terms of how they can run the ball to last year, that should make life pretty easy for Underwood in terms of getting started. And like, you don't have to turn him into Superman right off the bat. He just has to be able to complete some passes early and then get comfortable. And then you start unleashing all that he can do.
Yeah. Also, too, we have some Michigan fans on the chat, and I actually had this thought before that they brought this up, but like, is Jake Garcia already better than the quarterbacks they had on the roster a year ago?
I don't know. I mean, he lost his job at East Carolina. Caden Hauser took over midseason last year. So I don't know that he's better than what they had, but clearly they feel like he gives them depth and helps them. It's weird. It's a weird thing. And I know you've talked about this before. You've got this thing where if somebody's been a high-level recruit, you just will not let it go. And the possibility is always there that they'll suddenly shine. I think after 3 schools, you kind of know where somebody is.
Yeah, you're probably right. For me, I get fixated on high-level recruits because high-level recruits have high-level traits. And I'm always like a big traits guy. You don't get to be a top 50 player or top 50, overall player or top 100 or wherever he ended up. I know that his rankings changed a lot but he was a big get when Miami got him by not having a good arm and good physical traits. So I always wonder, I mean, like the thing is like if the man can't play at all, which his resume would show that he can't, then like what's Michigan doing, right? Just adding a body.
Well, it sounds like they may need to if there's an issue, but yeah, so Jake Garcia, by the way, if the name sounds familiar to you from the recruiting process, he is the one who in 2020 his parents legally separated so he could transfer to play at a school in Georgia. And I think,
was he committed to Georgia at one point, or am I imagining that?
I cannot remember if he was committed to Georgia at any point. I thought Miami was the first school he committed to. His recruitment was very heavily covered, and he was I believe he's from California. He went to one school in Georgia, and then he was going to go to another school in Georgia, and that's where that came from. But it was one of those stories like, hey, that's kind of weird. Like the parents are legally separating, what? And it was to
Oh, he's committed to USC, not Georgia.
It was USC. Okay.
Yeah,
It was USC.
I knew he was
That's what it
committed
was.
somewhere else because it was a big deal when he flipped, I thought, to Miami. Yeah.
Yeah. But so it's one of those things that, like, what a strange. I kind of want to have Jake Garcia on the show and just talk about his journey through college football. Like, what a strange journey. Like, when you lose the job at East Carolina last year, like, and somebody tells you you're going to play for Michigan next year, you'd be like, what are you, nuts?
Well, just so you know, offer list for Jake Garcia out of high school was Georgia, Florida, LSU, USC, Florida State, Tennessee.
Oh,
Auburn,
everybody wanted the
Alabama.
Guy. Yeah.
Alabama, Miami, Texas. So everybody liked him. So,
yeah,
and from a quarterback perspective, that means you had something in the tank. I don't know if it's all gone or what goes on. The thing that I think is interesting is when everybody, like Nick Saban, offered this man. Okay. So if everybody, including Nick Saban, thought he was good enough to come to their school, I am always very shocked when they can't thrive at East Carolina. That's right. Not kind of wrong. And so maybe something else went off the rails there. But usually the maybe that you have to get an Alabama offer would equate to you being a pretty high level, lower tier college quarterback.
But at quarterback, the traits that get you the offer don't necessarily make you a star in college. When you jump up a level, the game goes faster, it gets more difficult. And so sometimes the quarterbacks just they can't jump that level. And you see it from college to pro too. So that may be what happened here, but we'll see. And this is, like you said, this is a guy who had elite traits coming out of high school, but it hasn't worked out for him in college. But now he is at a premier program, and who knows? Maybe he has to step in at some point. So we'll find out. But Ari, it's been quite a fun discussion. We got to see the panties in question. So what a day. Maybe the mystery will get solved. Maybe it won't. We were going to talk about
DNA tested.
Now we're getting too far. Now it's just gross. I don't want to see any black light. None of that. It was funny before. The line's right there, and
I want to be forensically cleared. That's all.
Scott in the chat, you washed them, so no.
Oh, we did wash them. That's right. They came out of the dryer. God.
Yep. So it's too late. You've already scrubbed the evidence.
Yeah,
clean.
I didn't wash them. She washed them. Let's be clear about that. But yes,
that's true. Well, we were going to talk about my experience going to a couple camps on vacation. We will do that on Wednesday's show because that was a very interesting experience and good to kind of put myself in the shoes of some of these parents that we have to deal with quite a bit and the players, and there's a lot of pressure on some of these guys, these young high school guys. So we'll talk about that, and who knows, maybe there will be another break in the case, even though Ari has erased all the evidence.
Yeah,
we'll find out.
We'll probably stop talking about it at some point, but because I just have kind of resigned myself to not being able to ever figure it out and just moving on happily in my marriage without bringing it up again. But it was
funny right up until you said DNA test.
Yeah, maybe
then it got real.
Maybe that's where it ends. Yeah, I don't know.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.